Okay, you are live.
Okay, so my name is Richard Swirsky. I'm the councilman for the First Ward. I'm the chair of our prevention committee, and we have some, I believe, really interesting speakers today covering about dispatch operations, also hearing about what sounds like a really great example in another city, Alexandria, Kentucky. And we're kind of lucky to be able to have a police chief here to give us his perspective on the things that they're doing. So you're going to put up the, is that supposed to be going up the share? There we go. Okay. So let's see. And then I think it's really great that we're going to be able to close with an experienced policewoman who's now a counselor. You weren't an experienced policewoman? Huh? Do I have it wrong?
I wanted to correct that. I was never a police officer. I worked with the police through victim assistance for 12 years.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for correcting. Thank you for correcting. Okay. All right. But still, you'll be able to talk with us about, and I'm glad the experience of working with victim assistance is also important. I'm sure you have a lot to share with us. And I have to say that in part, I'm grateful to the efforts of Shelby Kennedy. I don't know if we'd have the chief of police from Alexandria here if it wasn't for her efforts. And Trevon has done some research and provided us some good articles, which we're going to get to at some point. But maybe not today. But if not, would you like to share a little bit about your research if we have time right at the end, or if we could put you on next week? Same with you, Shelby. You're welcome to. But since we have such good speakers, let's let them do that. And it's always very lively and interesting. So, but the first thing that I have to do is, I guess since Mrs. Moby and I, can we have approval for the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes, this is Linda Mobian, at-large councilwoman, co-chair of this committee, and I would say move approval for the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and Ms. Mobian has been instrumental in getting some speakers in other meetings and helping to move this committee forward. And she has years of experience in the social service field, as well as, you finished your PhD, right?
Not quite.
Not quite. Okay. It's kind of, it's not an easy project.
I might finish it before I die.
It's not an easy project, but so we have a lot of interesting people here with a lot to say. So I think we're going to have approval of the minutes then. I second it and I will declare them approved. I think that's okay. And let's move on to hearing about the Akron Police Department dispatch operations from Captain Harding.
So thanks for having me. Would I be able to share my screen? I made a few PowerPoint.
Sure, sure. Give me
that sounds great. Thank you for doing that.
Sure. It should let you know.
I just also want to point out, we also have our liaison people from the Akron Police Department, Captain Beitzel, and well, okay.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, great. So I'll get started here on just a few slides for us. So I just want to start off by saying thanks for having me. They'll give me a chance to talk about our combined dispatch center. Our dispatch center, we handle all incoming calls, but for both police, fire, and EMS. So we handle all 911 calls as well as non-emergency calls. And how that works is the call comes in, it's answered by a call taker. At that point, they enter in our computer-aided dispatch system. They put the more details in there. It's given a priority of the call. It's also sent to a dispatcher. We have dispatchers that'll be working at fire and EMS and one at police. Depending on the hours of the day, we may have 2 at police. From there, they're going to send that call to a first responder. Going to send that call to a first responder. They're also going to get information and notes in their cruiser or in their AFD or fire rig as well. We're staffed with 51 full-time safety communications center technicians. We have 2 civilian supervisors that primarily handle our training, as well as our quality assurance program. Currently, we're really happy now. So we have 10 new trainees that just started 2 weeks ago. So we're really excited about that. We also have police and fire supervisors in the room at
Unless
all
this one
times.
doesn't have a camera.
So we average about 165,000 911 calls per year. Total incoming calls around 370,000 incoming calls.
You have it
per
on your
year.
computer? Oh, it does have a camera.
Can you guys hear it okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
sorry.
okay.
Sorry, I heard some background noise. I
Sorry.
apologize.
Yeah.
Just of note, our busiest time during the day is always pretty much 2 to 4 in the afternoon, where we average as many as 60 calls during that hour. And we staff that with normally 5 call takers handling that amount of calls. The state of Ohio has a mandate for us to answer 911 calls, wireless 911 calls specifically within 90% of the time within 10 seconds. So we're happy to say that we exceed that expectation, and we're at 92% as a dispatch center. Training, I know you asked briefly about training. Training, we start new trainees. They go with classroom training for 6 to 7 weeks initially, where they're going to cover rules, how to use the CAD, the basics of call taking. They're all trained on emergency medical dispatch, which we have a program called ProQA that launches specific questions as part of our CAD system, get more details and more information to help us prioritize calls. Additionally, they all get CPR training. After that initial 6 to 7 weeks of classroom training, they're placed with an experienced trainer, a dispatcher. We're lucky to have a lot of great experienced dispatchers. They're placed with them for roughly around 6 weeks. During that time, they can listen to their calls, monitor what they're doing, and also fill out reports to help us understand if there's any remedial training needs or issues that they may have. After roughly around 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the technician, they're given the opportunity to test out, where they'll be given a series of calls. If they pass that, they're able to work alone with a little bit of guidance for the next 2 to 4 weeks. And then we repeat that for our next discipline. The next discipline, we break them up and we either go to fire and EMS dispatch, police dispatch, or leads, which is basically running law enforcement information, warrants, protection orders, that kind of information. And we repeat that process. It starts with classroom. Those other disciplines are not as long, normally a week to 2 weeks of classroom. Again, placed with an experienced dispatcher who monitors their work and fills out daily observation reports on what they're completing. And then again with a test out, and they're able to work that discipline. We have a 1-year probationary period for all our safety communications technicians. Additional training that we have on a yearly basis is hazmat training, a ProQA or EMD refresher training. We also have continuing education, so our dispatchers have to go through that. Additional lead certification, and then the state issues certain as PSAPs, but those are public safety answering points, our 911 center dispatch videos that we have to watch, additional CPR certification, and then we have additional continuing education that we require of our dispatchers as well. A little more context, we roughly handle about 255,000 police incidents a year and a little over 50,000 fire and EMS incidents a year. Many of those have multiple unit responses. I think we average over 1 million radio transmissions a year from the safety communication or in the city of Akron. So it's a very busy center. We handle more than 50% of the total calls in the county. Quality assurance is something we're pretty proud of. Wish we could even do more. We review all significant calls. We also have random calls that are given. One of our civilian supervisors are going to review those. They're going to listen from the call from beginning to end. They're going to discuss with the technician, kind of celebrate the good work, which most of our technicians do an amazing job. They're going to celebrate the good work with them. They're also going to, if there's any improvement or issues there, they're going to address those. And they're also, if we continue to see the same problem over and over again, we're going to use that as to help us identify future training needs. And we use Wednesdays in the center as a primary day for training. So we try, if there's an issue that we need to come up with some additional training, that'll primarily be handled on Wednesdays, and we can send out bulletins and other information as well. So I know I covered a lot, really kind of quick. I didn't know where you wanted to go. I wanted to kind of, just say thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me a brief minute to talk about dispatch. I figured you guys may have some questions, and I guess I can quit screen sharing now and be happy to answer whatever you have.
Okay. Well, I guess one of the questions, let's go back to the training.
Sure.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more? As well as the recruitment, training and recruitment, how that happens. I mean, how do people
Sure.
come to become? Yeah.
So we start with, city's gonna post for the position. There's minimum qualifications. They must have a high school degree or GED. They're gonna have to take a typing test to show they can do that. Then they're giving a civil service test. We get them ranked and we're given the list by HR. At that point, we do have a background packet and a background investigation we conduct on all new candidates. There are very few disqualifiers. One would be a felony conviction because we can't allow them to run leads or law enforcement information with that. At that point, they go through an interview process. If they're given a job offer, then we give them a bunch of information ahead of time, and then they go through training. So
Okay. So, and what is the training? I mean, is it?
well, that was kind of what I talked about before.
Yeah.
They're going to get 6 to 7 weeks initially. We're going to have police and fire personnel. They're going to give them training. We're going to handle call types, emergency medical dispatch, CPR, basically rules and regulations of the communication center, how to use the technology. I mean, it's a very much a technology forward position. Our technicians are going to have 3 computer screens at the same time. One's going to have the 911 phone system in. They're going to get information dumped into a map that's going to show them where the call originated from. They're going to get a series of questions and they fill that out on our computer-aided dispatch system. We also do a city tour to give them a better idea when someone says certain areas in the city. We want to make sure a lot of our people are very familiar with the city that we get, but even if not, it's important when someone calls and says we live in a certain section of town that they have a better understanding of that as well. We also have
that sounds good. Yeah,
Yep.
that sounds good. So, but it's a training when they first come on.
Yes.
And how are they, trained to make decisions about referring calls? I mean, does every call that comes in, does someone from the police go out and look at it, or do they?
Not everyone. So we're like prime example, we do telephone report officers. If someone's calling in about a very minor report, especially during COVID, we've really amped that up. Where we're just going to have that handled by a police officer over the phone. We will make other referrals to outside agencies. We get the technicians handle all types of calls, from emergencies to referrals to other agencies as well.
Okay, so it seems like it might be kind of difficult to get someone who's new to the job to sort of, it's a lot at them at once. I mean, I guess a lot of jobs are like that. But how do they know, well, this one should go to social service? So you do sometimes send them directly to social service, or sometimes they go directly to
well, some are going to be
call
311
car.
calls. People, we may get calls about high grass or other things like that as well, that we're going to send to 311 or some other entities there. We may get some calls that are more of a civil nature. If the technician kind of has a question, they can refer the police sergeant on call, or if it's more of a fire EMS call, they can refer that information to the supervisor from AFD as well. So they do have some additional resources there, but part of that training is to understand that, look at questions. They are prompted with certain questions in the as they go through narrative, other information, as they look for call types. And when they're placed with that more experienced trainer, that's where they get a lot of that as well. What will happen when they're with an experienced trainer after that classroom training is that they're both going to be listening to the same 911 call. So the new technician will eventually be starting by watching the experienced technician, asking questions and follow up. Then they're going to be the ones on the phone asking questions. If they don't remember a question, can't think of something, aren't handling it well, the experienced technician would also be on that line as well and able to take over at that point to handle that.
So there's a lot of peer mentoring.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Captain Harding, just curious, it sounds like you start out with individuals that are on a list. They take a technical test, a typing test or something, you said?
They take a typing test and then they're given a civil service test from HR.
And then when you interview them or go look at that list, you have to take the top numbers, or do you?
Yeah, so if we have a position for 5, we would be reviewing the top 8. But we also have a background investigation as part of that as well. So they'll be given a packet assigned to a background investigator, look at work history, strong morals, those kind of things. Additionally, felony convictions has really brought the only real disqualifier we have, because they can't operate leads with that.
So when you interview them, do you do scenarios? Because when we listen to people, when they talk to dispatchers, like the newspaper when someone is having a baby or a child is calling and there's some kind of devastation happening in the home. The dispatchers sound like they're so calm and so collected. So I'm trying to figure out, do you give them some type of therapy to go along with this position? Because I think I'll be freaking out if I had to do some of this work that they do.
So we do play them a handful of pretty serious calls, make sure that they feel they can handle that type of call. I mean, we're blessed to have some amazing staff, and it's a very challenging, to your point, they're going to get a call from somebody dying to a traffic. I mean, people call, as I like to say, people call 911. It's normally the worst day of their life, right? I mean,
Right.
That's really that bad. So being able to deal with people in that call after call after call does take a very special person. So we do look for those as part of our background packet, part of our interview process, and we're pretty clear with our candidates about that.
And I would imagine as they work longer, you get more experience and
Sure.
you learn how to take a deep breath and kind of work through the emergency. Because I tell you, I've been listening to some of these people that are taking folks through who are having babies in the car trying to get to the hospital. And they'll talk them through it. I'm sitting there saying, wow, these are not medical professionals, but they're helping these individuals. And then when a child is calling because something has happened in the home, they are able to tell the child, you know, there's help on the way. You just make sure you stay on the phone with me and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's amazing what these individuals do.
It is. It is. We're blessed.
Yeah.
I have a question. I must have been
Please.
gone for a while because you were Sergeant Harding when I left.
I was going to say, it's good to see you.
You do. So quick question, what do you guys have in place for self-care for the dispatchers? Because I would imagine that, I mean, after a while.
Yeah.
It is. It is. That's an area we work at. We can always get better. We do have the city offers ease at work for technicians. We have some additional services, some stress debriefing that we can do, whether that's joint with police or fire or just for us. But that is absolutely an area we can always do more. I mean, it's a stressful time. Ease at Work offers some point where they can have a counselor 24/7. So if we get a really emotional time, we can do that. We try to, you know, I kind of say peer mentor a little bit there on, do you need something? You know, let's so-and-so may had a really rough call. We may need to give them a break for a little while.
Yeah,
So,
I imagine.
Well, do you have resources to do? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have resources to do any kind of celebrations when they do exciting things? And I don't mean a lot of money, but sometimes it just takes a small little change to throw whatever kind of little celebration to
So
think.
we used to have like an award we'd give them. We'd give out once a month. We'd have people nominate, and we do that. We haven't done that in a while. Really, around the time of COVID, we've tried to. Let's make it a challenge. So we do try to celebrate the success that we have. I mean, we get a lot of calls. There's a lot of reason to celebrate. So it actually became hard sometimes to just pick one candidate that did a great job. So we try. Again, that's an area I'm sure we could even do better.
So what's the average length of the tenure of a dispatcher?
Oh, wow. We get turnover. Normally it appears that if you make it through probation, which I'd say for us is about 70% due, after 3 years, we think that we're probably going to have you for a while. Some of our people come in and they may be teachers or had been teachers. We get a very, they may decide they want to do that. We have a lot of people that retire from here, but we do. And that's just not us. If you look at any of the national statistics, it's a challenging job. There's a lot of turnover.
Sure.
911 centers across the country are always understaffed. To your point, it's a stressful job. They go from call to call, they hang up on one stressful one and the phone's ringing for another one. So,
Sure.
it's stressful. So turnover is never, we'd like to get them and keep them forever. And that doesn't happen to the level we'd like.
And their shifts, what is it, 8 hours or 4 or 5?
10-hour shifts. So they get every other weekend off. They work a rotating schedule where they work 4 10-hour shifts. We have a lot of overtime. We have some people that handle that as well. But no, so they get 4 10-hour days.
So they like that?
Yes,
10
I
hours
think.
straight?
Yes, yeah, yep.
Oh, okay.
The extra day off, I believe.
Is our operation pretty similar to other ones around the country, or is there something that we do that's unique? Or
I would say a couple things. So in the county, we're the only ones, we have a call taker that handles the call at first, and then it goes to a separate dispatcher. Some smaller jurisdictions or other jurisdictions, the same call taker will also dispatch the call. So there's kind of two different ways dispatch centers are set up. My experience is the majority of the larger centers are set up more like we are. And maybe some of the smaller centers where they might not have as much staff, the same person's going to take the call and dispatch it. So that may be one thing that's slightly unique about us than some other area dispatch centers.
Mhm.
So how did you get this assignment?
I bid for it. I was promoted and I have technical services. So I have the dispatch center. I also have our planning and research and our IT division for the police department and a couple other records, a couple other divisions as well. So I've always kind of been into technology, and that's why I bid on this position.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Harding?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if you can see that Trayvon has his hand raised.
Oh, good. Okay.
I had two questions. One would be the protocols about whenever you receive a call with a firearm. And then another question would be, do you guys ever have like any miscommunication between the call taker and then the dispatcher at any time?
So when you say, I'll start with the second one. There would be a chance where they might not understand the notes as the technician's entering something really quick. They may do that. You'll occasionally hear the dispatcher say, yell over to the call taker, can you give me some more on this? Or what were you trying to say in that? That's rare, but it happens. I mean, we're trying to get the information from very upset and frustrated callers usually. They may be yelling and doing that. So you do get some more notes that come through and they're looking for more information, trying to calm the person down. Can you give me more detail about your question or what you're looking for with the firearm specifically?
I was just like saying, like, when you get a call, the call taker is going to transfer it over to the dispatcher, and it's going to be the call taker letting the dispatcher know that there's a firearm involved. And then how would the dispatcher go about letting a police officer know about the firearm?
So that's going to be in the notes. We also can escalate calls if there's a firearm involved. It will be in the notes. It makes it a higher priority call, becomes a different color code on their screen so that there's more detail. And that's not just firearm, but that's one. That note will be in there. That'll be relayed to the officers by the dispatcher. And additionally, that whole call card is also sent to the officer in their car. So they have a mobile computer in their car that's going to get that information as well. But our dispatchers definitely look for an area where it's going to say firearms.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are they comfortable with people observing them?
The dispatchers?
Yeah. Do you have people just to sit around and observe?
We have in the past. We have not during the coronavirus. We locked down the room
Okay.
to try to eliminate that. But yes, we've had people come in. We've had some college or high school students that in specific programs come in as well to do that. We try to partner with people in the area if they want to come in and see that. We have done that. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea, Mrs. Moby, and possibly council will spend some time up there probably after the COVID.
Please after COVID, but we'd love to have you.
Just don't show up between 2 and 4, huh?
No, show up then too. It's good to see. It's good to see that.
Yeah.
See us working our busiest. It's good.
Okay.
Thank you
So
much.
unless there's, unfortunately, we're to keep time going here. If you want a question, please, you could put it down in chat, and we'll try to get it answered later or something. But I really, appreciate Chief Cooper coming here and presenting to us. And I'd like to, and we have another speaker too. So let's go right to Chief Cooper, and you want to present to us some of the basics of the program that your city has.
Yeah, absolutely. So we run the city of Alexandria is kind of on the opposite of where you guys are at. So we're only a city of about roughly 10,000 residents. Our police department handles about 20 to 22,000 calls a year. Our closest landmark is Cincinnati, Ohio. We're about 20 miles south of Cincinnati in Campbell County, Kentucky. So if you've ever been to a Cincinnati Reds game before, we're the county right across from the stadium. So that's about the only way to find us. Alexandria is rather rural. Most of our community is, people that are commuting into areas like Cincinnati and stuff like that to work. So The program that we run is what we call a police social worker program. It was an idea born from the chief prior to me, who had been at Alexandria about 16 years. He actually retired last year, and I took over for him. I've been with the city of Alexandria for 14 years. And the idea for this program was he realized that there were very few resources available to not only the police officers, but the community, to people in need of social services that we were responding to calls for. And, we have a cabinet for health and family services in the state of Kentucky. And I've spoken with some Ohio departments. So it seems like our program in Kentucky is set up a little differently than yours. But essentially, if we went to a call and we felt that someone was suffering from, maybe neglect or abuse or a mental health crisis, we do a certain sort of report that gets forwarded onto the health cabinet. And if they don't accept that call, then that person is kind of left to their own devices unless they want to go seek out resources on their own. The idea behind our police social work program is that the police department was going to employ a full-time social worker that could be a liaison between the police department and also our fire department to people that we deal with on certain sorts of calls. And I don't think that there is anything that is out of the realm of calls that they have taken. One of the first major cases when they came on in 2016, and I say they, we actually have two now. We originally hired one in 16. We realized that the program was going good. We hired a second in 18. And so that's about where we will probably be for quite a while, is the two that we have. But to just give you an example of some of the stuff that they help provide services for, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but let me pull up my list here. Okay. So some of the things that they help us deal with, one of the biggest ones is mental health services. The majority of our repeat calls for services are going to be going to people that are suffering from mental health crisis. And if those people don't have access to the resources that they need, the only people they know to call, like Captain Harding said earlier, is the police. They're having an emergency. Who do you call? You call the police. What we try to do is we try to address these issues outside of times of emergency. We've found that that is the most effective way to deal with things. When people are calling 911, whether it be for a mental health crisis or a domestic violence issue or an overdose, or even because they don't have any food on the shelves in their house, that's not the best time to try and help them be rational about their problems or their issues and try to solve them. But our police social workers serve, as I said before, as a liaison. They are making additional contacts outside of those times of crisis to try and help get people in touch with resources they may need or provide them services, just follow up with them. And there's nothing that they don't do. Like I said, mental health crisis, addiction, homelessness, elderly, juvenile services, you name it. They can kind of deal with a lot of that. To give you a real quick idea of how they operate, they are not first responders. They are not responding to a 911 call for service. If a 911 call comes into our dispatch center, our officers are going to be the first ones to handle that. They are kind of what we call second responders. Normally, they're going to follow up with someone maybe the next day or maybe within a few hours if it's an emergency to start the ball rolling on getting that person in touch with some additional resources or programs that might be able to help them. On some occasions, they will come directly to the scene of a call. That's normally determined by our officers whether it's safe or not. And sometimes, we've had situations where they'll hear a call come across the radio, they'll hear the names of the parties involved, and they'll call the officers and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and start heading that way because we have a rapport with this person. They're used to us. They're probably going to deal with us better than they're going to deal with you. And 99% of the time, that's probably the case. Our officers get there, they make sure that everything's safe, and our social workers are handling that. But like I said, the vast majority of the stuff that they're dealing with are follow-up calls, and that may be over the phone. That may be they go to the house and knock on the door and introduce themselves and say, I'm with the Alexandria Police Department. I'm a social worker. We want to try and help with whatever the situation was that maybe the officers were here dealing with last night or the day before or whenever that may be. They wear a polo shirt that says Alexandria Police Department on it. They drive unmarked Ford Focuses. We provide them with a car. computer. They have a radio, so they're always communicating with our dispatch center. If they are at a house or if they are at a location out with somebody, that's always being made known. And again, the majority of the time they're dealing with something, it's someone that knows they're coming, it's someone that knows what they're there for, someone that they've already built a relationship with, or at least contacted ahead of time. So that's in a nutshell, kind of what the program does. There's a lot more to it. They also help serve as kind of community resources. They help run our Coffee with a Cop program every year. They get that organized. They run an after-school basketball program at our community center. They run, let's see, Thanksgiving's coming up. We're doing a blessing bag program where they're collecting items to give out to homeless people. We normally do a Christmas tree, and they help with all of that stuff, kind of as a community outreach resource also. And then another way that they serve is kind of a question that was asked earlier. They can help serve as a resource for our officers too. An officer that might have had a hard call or might have gone through a bad night or might have a lot of stuff going on. They can help them work through those programs or get them in touch with additional resources that might help them better process through those situations.
So they do a variety of things.
They do. They are very busy.
Yeah, they must be. Yeah. Mrs. Bowman, did you have any?
Yeah, are they hired by your police department?
Yes. Yeah, they are full-time employees of the police department. They actually fit inside of our rank structure. They are civilian employees, so they're not sworn law enforcement officers, but they do serve in our CID, which is our criminal investigation division. They serve as a branch of that.
And you say you only have two, right?
We have two, yes.
So the first one you took a chance on. So what did you do? Just advertise that you wanted to?
Yeah, so the chief prior to me is actually the one that designed the program, and he actually heard about it, I believe, at a conference. Apparently, there are several cities in Illinois that have similar programs, and that's where he heard about it at. And he came back. We have a university here in our county. He worked with the social work professors at our local university to try and draw up a rough idea of a job description and the kind of person that we would want to fill it. And we advertised for the position. We lucked out with our first hire. So our original social worker, she had worked for 14 years at our Health and Family Services cabinet. She was a supervisor there. She dealt with, when she left there, she was actually the supervisor over the child abuse and child sex crimes divisions. So she had experience there. Plus she has a dad and a brother that are both police officers. So she kind of knew how to deal with cops from day one. And she knew that there was a special breed of people she was coming to deal with. But yeah, we did kind of build this program from the ground up. And, it's kind of become a model here across the state. There are several other agencies across the state of Kentucky that are starting to adopt this. And, I don't know exactly which article it was that you guys read about our program, but we've been all the way up to The Guardian has done a story on our program. And so we get calls from all over the country at this point of people that are interested in stuff like this.
So do you share your program and your job description?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe I might have sent that information to Sarah originally. And if I did not, I can forward that on to somebody that can get that to all of you.
Yeah, we have copies, and we're going to send it as a follow-up to
I have
a
a job description, our policy, and also a thing that one of our workers put together, which she calls a toolkit. And it kind of really breaks down how the program works, how it was formed. And then she gives some real life examples of ways that they've helped on certain calls.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And so what, could you name some other cities that are doing this just off the top of your head?
So the one that probably has the most structured program to ours is a city here in Northern Kentucky, also called Erlanger. They actually have a full-time police social worker, and she interned under our social worker while she was in college. Jeffersontown, which is near Louisville. Let's see, there's a very small city called Cynthiana that has a social work program. Our county police department and another local municipality near us just posted for a position today. They're creating one. So it's an idea that's starting to kind of take off here. And, in reality, I see it being something pretty Oh, I'm sorry, in Georgetown, if you guys are Georgetown, Kentucky, which is just north of Lexington, they have a full-time police social worker also.
Mhm.
Well,
Hey,
how
Kate-
large is
yeah, okay.
Alexandria?
How large are we?
Uh-huh.
We're a city of about 10,000 people, so we're relatively
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
And your police department is what?
We have 17 full-time officers.
17?
Could you see, I mean, some people might say, well, it's a nice thing in a small city, but could you see that something like this, we'd have to have our own model,
Mhm.
our own way of doing it. We have some police who are social workers on our in our force. Could you see something like this working in a bigger city?
Yeah, I mean, we've had that question asked to us several times. I think that it is a program that could work really at a city of any size, just depending upon how it's structured. The way that I would foresee it being broken down is having social workers assigned to each district or area or however it is necessarily that your city's broken down. But we feel that there's kind of two main things that have to happen with this position. And one of the reasons that we think it's very important for this person to work for the police department is the officers need to know that this is somebody that they can trust, that if they refer people to this person or they send this person to somebody's house, they know that this person is going to provide good service. Most of our officers are not going to refer you to somebody if they don't know that they're going to do good work. So we feel like that's very important, that the officers know that this person is somebody that they can trust and is going to do a good job and is going to help people, because I believe any of the officers on here can tell you 99% of the officers want to see a positive outcome to any call that they go to. And so they're not going to just send anybody over there to help people if they don't think that they're going to reach a good solution. And the other reason that we feel like it's important that they kind of be assigned to one particular area is for that community outreach reason. We have people that particularly, they just call our police department and they ask to speak to the social worker. They go right by the police officers, they go right by everybody else, they call and they say, hey, I want to speak with your guys' social worker. This is what I'm dealing with. We've run addiction services in the past, and people will call us and say, hey, I need to get into treatment somewhere. Can you guys help me? And, they start making phone calls and normally have somebody somewhere by, the next day.
Yeah, that sounds really like you would reduce the load on the policing needs if that started happening.
What we feel like it does is it reduces a lot of the repeat calls for service that officers are, I hate to use the word ineffective on, but really can't make a lot of headway on. We're getting called to a domestic situation that's been brewing for 20 years, and they want us to handle it in 20 minutes. And that's just not going to happen. So what we've seen is a lot of these repeat calls for service, once our social workers are able to start working with them, sometimes maybe get them involved in family court, sometimes get them in with counselors. We see those people and those problem kind of calls stop or go away or happen much less frequently than they used to. So it's hard to put a number on, is this reducing our calls for service? Because we really don't know. If people don't call 911, you don't know they're not calling 911. But we do know that people that we've had a track record with of dealing with over and over and over again, we see much less of that through this program. And it frees our officers up to do their job.
I don't know, let me ask the Akron Police. I mean, are we doing the kind of a similar thing, only calling it something different, or is there a big difference, or anybody want to respond?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I assumed that Lieutenant Miller was going to respond, but I'll respond to that.
Okay.
We do have a lot of the similar type of programs with our outreach programs, with both our drug outreach programs and our outreach that is done through CSS. We also have victims assistance, which can't be understated, their value to our police department, and they are 24/7. They have a little bit of a different role. The difference I see is that these are actual employees of the police department in this with this organization, whereas with us, they're not actually, they're funded through other means. As far as one thing he said that was huge was that he highlighted the fact that they are not first responders, and that's always been the thing that's really bugged me about talking about this, is because to me that just is putting people unnecessarily in danger. So they are, and I've also welcomed any resources that we can have after the fact, after the situation is made safe or later the next day, which we already have. But we can always, expound on that. It never hurts to look at it and see what other resources we can put in place for these victims or for these folks that are suffering with mental illness or drug addiction or anything like that. But we are already doing a lot of what Chief Cooper is doing. It just looks different. It's just done with, instead of being a police employee, they're hired through they're parts of other agencies.
More
Mike,
through collaboration.
right.
Yeah.
Mike, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that was well said, and I agree with both Chief Cooper and Captain Beitzel. To include a reminder of what was discussed last time with respect to the QTR and folks partnering with agencies to go out to check for folks who are impacted by drug abuse or drug addiction. And then from a mental health standpoint, Ms. Linda Mobian knows all too well that we have strong community partnerships with our mental health agencies funded by the ADM board. Portage Path Behavioral Health, Portage Path Emergency Services, where I am here currently, and CSS, and a number of other local agencies that pick up the mental health component or the mental health referrals. So even though victim assistance may go out for crime-oriented trauma or incidents that families are impacted by, they can make referrals. They and or officers can make referrals, and those referrals get picked up and are actionable from that point almost immediately.
So, okay, well, thank you.
If I may add one,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
sure.
If I may
Please
add
do.
one thing, I
Yeah.
think another thing that makes our program so effective, and I'm sure you guys have something similar. All of our officers are CIT trained in crisis intervention training, and I think that's one of the things that makes our program effective. And I think it's one of the things that just makes policing more effective is that when officers have access to some sort of CIT training, it's been my experience that it teaches those officers to be more patient, sometimes maybe a little more understanding, and just a little more open to some different ideas. And so, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of that. You probably have some people that are CIT trained, and that's good because that helps those situations a lot, and it really helps to put things on a different path from the very beginning.
Well, we just happen to have our CIT coordinator on this Zoom call, Sergeant Donahue, who is, I'm sure, going to unmute at any moment, and if he can figure that out. But we do have a lot of our. Go ahead, Jamie. I see you unmuted. Go ahead. Well, now he can't figure it out again.
Oh, wait. Good.
There you go. There you go.
Sorry, I tried to send you a prompt to unmute and it probably canceled out your attempt to unmute. Sorry about that.
So I was a social worker for almost 20 years, and I don't think we can separate out police officers from social workers because our tasks are very similar, and we get caught up in the terminology of social worker versus police officer. The thing is, we go out and we identify the problems, we make an assessment, and we do a treatment plan or a plan, right? I mean, that's essentially what a social worker does, and that's what police officers do. And so we get caught up in sending out mental health workers, but in reality, a lot of what we do, especially in Akron, is helping people get their resources. And our officers are well versed, and we are lucky in Summit County, Akron, Ohio, that we have all the resources that we do. In a small place like Chief Cooper's, I'm sure you're limited in your resources that we fortunately do have and you don't have. Yep. So our officers again are well versed in what resources are available and hooking people up, and that's part of the social work thing that we do and connect it with police officers. So we have a lot, and most of our officers anymore are CIT trained. We're doing CIT in our academies, and regardless of the CIT, our officers are taught on a regular basis de-escalation techniques in getting people diverted from the criminal system into the health system if it's a mental health crisis. So we're doing a lot of those things that you're doing down there. We're not calling it what you call it, but in reality, that's what we're doing. We are performing a lot of the social work tasks.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank Chief Cooper, and I'm glad that we had a good exchange. And don't worry, Chief Cooper, we're not through with you yet. We're going to be talking to you more after this meeting. But I do have a really strong person here who's worked with victim assistance, has worked her own counseling practice. And why don't you share with us some of your experiences and some things that you think would be helpful to the police department?
Well, you know, in listening to, is it Lieutenant Cooper? I didn't catch the
Chief.
Cooper. You know, part of that really described, and I'm not sure what the victim assistance program does now, but I know there was a community victim advocate when I was there, because I was the community victim advocate for a while. And we would respond to, you know, situations where, you know, someone was homeless or, you know, something else was needed. And one of the things that is really important, that I see is important to officers, is that they really do have to be able to trust, like you said, that if they ask you to do something or follow up with a situation, that you are going to do it. And the same thing when you talk about mental health treatment with police officers, that again is extremely important. I know that Akron has the EAP program for the police officers, and obviously for the dispatchers and police officers' families. What I have seen is that a lot of times some of the officers don't necessarily trust that their confidentiality is going to be maintained with the EAP programs, or that if there's a situation where they might feel that they're being assessed for fitness of duty. And I'm not 100% sure on all of the situations, but I know that there's been various times that I've had conversations with officers, and that was the situation as to why they were not utilizing the EAP programs. And that really kind of started when I was at victim assistance. I'd have officers come and sit in my office and just kind of start talking of me having other things that I was supposed to be doing, but, you know, I was going to ask them to leave. So I think that it's important that, you know, that person who is offering any sort of mental health have some familiarity with police work, and that there's the location is not somewhere close to the police department, as you know, so that that confidentiality can be, you know, maintained. But, you know, I think that it's important that there are, you know, some options out there for the police and for the dispatchers and for the family members to, you know, be able to get the mental health that's needed, especially in today's world. You know, things are absolutely crazy. The stress levels have to be extremely high at this point for the police officers. You know, I think that sometimes they are experiencing some difficult, you know, almost having to split their role, you know, being, you know, a person who lives in the community, but also being someone who has to police the community. And so I think that that in itself can cause a lot of stress. And, you know, it's just, it's a difficult time with the political climate and the racial climate and everything. And I just think that there should be some other options.
Well, can I interject?
Yeah, please.
So I've been waiting to talk about this because I guess I assumed that everybody knew about the Safety Forces Support Center. But the Safety Forces Support Center, of which I happen to be the president of the board of, does provide confidential, free counseling to our safety forces in Summit County and beyond. We are a nonprofit, and we are also set up to do suicide awareness training. We go out into the academies and are in service, and we do suicide awareness, crisis intervention training. We have our critical incident stress management team that handles critical incidents, where we do critical incident stress debriefings on any critical incident in the Summit County or beyond area. And that does include all safety forces, to include dispatchers. We'll come into the dispatch center, our counselor will, after a serious incident, and do a diffusing. So all of those resources are available outside of EAP. Everybody in this police department knows about Safety Forces Support Center. They would have to be blind not to, because I have posters up everywhere. And we work very, very well with, and I know Victims Assistance knows about us because we were born from the same Furnace Street mission. We both came out of the same entity at first, and then we both split apart and became our own organizations. But they're absolutely, that is right on the money when she says there has to be somebody who understands an EAP for all its greatness, because EAP is wonderful. They do a lot of wonderful things, but when it comes down to counseling for safety forces, and anybody who has the kind of unique stressors that safety forces encounter, and she's right, especially in today's environment, it always helps to have somebody who understands that. And that's why peer support, and I won't get on a peer support tangent because I could talk for days, but peer support is also absolutely huge and needs to be implemented in a more formal manner in this police department. And I'm really hoping to work to get that done before I retire in a few years. I don't know if Chief Cooper has a peer support team down there, but it seems like every police department except ours actually has one. So,
So
anyway.
that is a need to increase the police support mentoring or peer support.
Peer support, yeah.
Yeah.
A peer support team is unique because they can be trained to a like peer level 2. Peer level 1 is kind of like, going to the bar and talking to your buddies and hashing it out. Peer level 2 is somebody who's actually specifically trained to direct officers to other resources that can help them. And they're trained also there's some oversight, some clinical oversight with our counselors. And that is something that I'm hoping to, really get off the ground, but there are some legal challenges. So
yeah,
anyway.
that also is something that I think would be really beneficial, is having some sort of peer support, because even a lot of times officers don't necessarily want to see any type of counselor because they feel like, I'm not crazy, I don't need to see a counselor.
Right.
There's still unfortunately a stigma attached to it, and then
There is.
they don't necessarily trust that person. They might feel that it's somehow going to hurt their career, and so having those peer supporters trained and able to really offer that safe space is huge.
Yeah, and there's government funding out there. We just have to be able to have an actual team, department sponsored team, to be able to get that kind of grant funding, to be able to apply for it. And we don't have that right now. So that's my project.
That sounds great.
But I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we do have a lot of resources. I'm sure that we can expand them. Because when I think about CIT program, hopefully we can get all of our officers trained in CIT, because the skills that they learn and the resources they learn about are just so phenomenal. And we have the one staff at CSS who rides along with a police officer. And I'm sure it's not the same one every week. Like, she goes out Monday nights with one officer, and then she drives around in the cruiser with another officer 2 or 3 times a week. But we could probably extend that to other agencies doing something similar, maybe. And it would be nice. I'm not sure what the other communities around Summit County are doing, but I think that's a huge resource, because when I think about all of the resources we have, and then I think about us trying to recreate a social service center within the police department, I'm not sure if that is something. Maybe we need to explore the pluses and minuses, because we have a huge network of social service agencies, and almost every committee I can think of, either there's an officer or an arm of the court or somebody on the like tough stuff. When you have these really tough cases where that involves homelessness or somebody living in a place that is inhabitable, and we're trying to get the person out and help them connect with something. Those cases are discussed with a whole range of agency representatives. And I think police officers and court representatives are invited to the table as well. And I know we have the QRT, or quick response, response team. And I know that's with the health department, going out with those individuals. I don't know. I just have a concern about us trying to recreate a social service unit of the police department. But I do see a need to have social workers that are trained to work with officers to be connected. So those things that the officers don't need to be going to repeatedly, that social workers or other agency representatives can do that, as opposed to having you so involved in that kind of work. If I'm making sense.
Chief Cooper, just to get some outside perspective, are there some benefits could there be some benefits culturally if there's more, social worker center inside the police department? Is there?
I mean,
Could anybody else see that? I mean,
I think
yeah.
that's going to vary based upon the agency that you're dealing with and really what the culture inside that agency is. I mean, you guys, it sounds like, have access to a lot more resources, obviously, than we do, even though we're where we're at, we're structured a little bit differently. And our position fills a need that we don't think we should have to do, but we've kind of become obligated to do because nobody else is going to do it for us. So I think that, if it was a position that you all looked at inside the police department, it sounds like it could probably be someone that works more as a liaison with the other programs you already have established in that area, to work within the police department towards outside resources on a more regular basis, to maybe alleviate some of the officers from having to do those kind of things or try to reach out to those people. That's where it sounds like this position.
Sort of a coordinator. Do we have somebody like that already? Who's sort of the point person to work with the social agencies, or is bits of it broken apart throughout the system? Or anybody from APD want to respond to that?
When it comes to QRT, there is one person that handles the QRT, and then there's a separate person that handles the crisis outreach. So it's not just one person, they're two separate programs. And then victims assistance is their own entity, but they do have offices in the police department. And because generally and they're up in the detective bureau, because generally the calls that we would call them out on are the kind of calls that we would also be calling a detective out on, because they're trauma cases or major crimes. So we don't have one point person that handles all of the organization of the different units, but we all do talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to add, because I was aware of the safety forces down there in the Furnace Street mission and that building. What I found is that there's a lot of minority officers, and not just here in the city of Akron, but other police departments and sheriff's departments that are not necessarily feeling as comfortable going there. And so hence, I've had a lot of.
We've moved to the Red Cross building, but I understand that concern.
I don't think it's a building, but yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. And so there are other options. The Safety Forces Support Center is just one. I know there are other minority officers or any officer that doesn't feel comfortable, because right now both our counselors are females. So if somebody wouldn't feel comfortable with a female officer, the people on our critical incident stress management team are versed in other resources to refer out to. That's not their only option. So, well, at least we try to stay up on other resources as much as possible. There has to be something for everyone to get help, because quite honestly, a mentally resilient officer serves the public in a much better capacity.
That's a nice way of putting it. Mentally resilient. I like that.
Yeah.
We all need more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming to the 6 o'clock hour. Is there anybody like to make like a final comment, or especially Chief Cooper? Is there? Sorry to throw you on the spot here, but if there's, I just feel like we're lucky to have your time here, and if you want to say a few more words, if not, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, if you all have any questions about, how our program works, or if you think there's bits and pieces of it that you could maybe steal and work into other things, or questions about how it functions, feel free to reach out to me. If you guys want to send my contact information over with those documents as you send them out to everybody, I'm more than happy to get back to you. As with anything nowadays, email is probably the easiest way to reach out to me, and then we'll hook up on a schedule that works better. But that's any great questions you guys might have,
we'll make sure everybody gets those, and then they can follow up with you. I don't know, Mrs. Mobian, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just love to thank Chief Cooper for spending the time with us, sharing with us the information about his program.
Yeah.
And I certainly, as most of the officers have said, we see a benefit in working with the police officers, whether it's second responders, tertiary responders. But I do understand that we don't need to be the first responder in many cases, but there are some situations where we can be helpful. And I think that's what we're talking about, trying to find a way to be helpful and take some of the pressure off the officers, particularly in those situations where maybe other skillful individuals are needed or could be utilized. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about taking anybody's job away, just trying to find ways to utilize other resources we have in our community. But thank you so much for giving us your time, and sounds like you have a great program down in Alexandria.
Okay, unless anyone else wants to make another comment, then I'll call for an end of the meeting. I don't think I'm missing anybody's hand. So, and thank you. I mean, there's so many knowledgeable people here, and we packed a lot into 1 hour, and so I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
How many more sessions we have?
Yeah, I think we have 2 more. Is that two more, sir?
Okay.
We have one more.
One more. Okay,
next
one
one
more.
will be
Yeah.
the 19th.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
And thank you, Officer Harding, and the young lady from the Victim Assistance, who used to work at Victim Assistance. Would you retire now?
I know, I just run my own private practice. Matter of fact, you hired me for my first job out of college. And you probably don't remember that, but
Well, you need to get in touch with me. You owe me.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks for having us.
since you called her a young lady, I'm sure she's appreciative, and as I am, if it ever comes my way.
Well, good night.